Hello everyone, thank you so much for clicking on today's video and welcome to my channel. In today's story, OP reaches out to Reddit because her boyfriend says really mean things to her in his sleep. One of the reasons that he says mean things sort of correlates with how much he's drunk the night before. A little ominous, I know, but this particular post has a 2-year update and things do take a sharp turn in that. Stay tuned for that to find out what happens. I do hope that you enjoy this story. If you do, please leave a thumbs up. And before I move on to the story, I just wanted to take a second and thank all of my subscribers. Thank you so much, you guys are so amazing. For those that are new here, if you do like my content and would like to support me, I would really appreciate it if you could hit the subscribe button. Anyways, thank you so much for your time and on to the story. My boyfriend, a 25-year-old male, says really mean things to me, a 25-year-old female, in his sleep. I need to preface this by saying that when my boyfriend is awake, he is wonderful and I couldn't be happier. We laugh and joke all day, and spending time with him in general is truly a joy. And yes, I mean this. No, he doesn't upset me at all when he's awake. Also, for some background, he works night shifts at a job that he really hates, so when he comes home, he likes to just relax and unwind, and usually with whiskey or beer. Typically, we cuddle or I massage his back and legs until he falls asleep. And to add, he doesn't need alcohol to fall asleep. I worded this wrong. He can fall asleep fine without it. I just meant that the alcohol makes him fall asleep quicker than usual. I have insomnia, so I usually end up staying awake for a while after he falls asleep. I'm also really sensitive to an aggressive tone of voice due to some past trauma. He only really talks in his sleep if I shift too much, try to move him over a little bit, or if I have no room on the bed, or if I move the blanket too much and it disturbs him. He usually snaps at me, saying, "Quit effing moving," or "Can you please effing stop?" or "Oh my effing god." Just things in general that give off an indication that he's really annoyed with me. There have also been a couple of unprompted times where he stirred or rolled over, I guess disrupting his own sleep, and said things like, "I can do better than this," etc. Because of my sensitivity, I usually end up crying over these things. I try to make it a point not to bring up the things that he says or does in his sleep, unless they're funny, which sometimes does happen, because for one, I really don't think that he can control it, and two, when I have brought things up that he said, he always ends up feeling horribly guilty for the things that he says, and that makes me feel guilty for saying anything. Last night, in his sleep, he ripped my blanket away from me. We sleep with separate blankets because this has been an issue in the past, and tucked it under himself and his own blanket. It was really cold in the room, so I tried to take it back, but he grabbed my hand and shoved it away. I didn't want to have to wake him up, but he's a lot stronger than me, and no matter what I tried to do, I just couldn't get the blanket back. I shook him gently and kept saying, "Baby, can you please give me back my blanket?" I was met with sleepy grunts, but he still wouldn't give it back. Finally, after a little persistent, he sat up really quickly and yelled, "What do you want? Jesus, you're annoying." And I said, "I just want my blanket back, please." He shoved it towards me and nearly knocked me off the bed, and then instantly laid back down and started snoring. I didn't sleep at all last night because of this. It's really eating at me. I really don't want to be annoying to him, especially when he's trying to rest after work, but I also don't know how I can keep putting up with this. Part of me wonders if he actually means any of the things that he says. When he woke up this morning, I couldn't bring myself to say anything about it, but I also couldn't look him in the eyes. I guess my question in this is, am I being too sensitive? Should I bring this up to him? I don't know how much that would accomplish because he usually has no recollection of it and doesn't know how to control it. What can I do to keep my sensitivity from affecting our relationship and the way that I see him and myself? First, I'd like to address the comments accusing my boyfriend of being an alcoholic, abusive, or claiming that I'm lying about how happy I am in the relationship, or suggesting that he wasn't actually sleeping during this and wanted an excuse to hurt me. I want to make it clear that those accusations are unfounded and baseless. He functions perfectly fine without alcohol and has gone weeks without it before. He doesn't need alcohol to fall asleep. He drinks after work because it helps him unwind, much like how someone might go to a bar on the weekend. To those of you who share anecdotes about how your parents started off like this before leading into full-on abuse, I'm sorry that you had to endure that, and I wish healing on all of you. However, that's not what's happening in my situation. I've known my boyfriend for 10 years and he doesn't have an abusive bone in his body. Now, onto the update. Shortly after I made this post, I asked him if he thought that I was annoying. He said, of course not, and asked me what prompted the question. When I brought up what he did in his sleep, he got quiet for a bit and then asked, "Why didn't you slap the heck out of me?" Which made me chuckle a bit. He then went on to say that he would prefer I tell him about the things that he says in his sleep, and if he ever crosses a line like that again, I have full permission to smack him, although I never would. I asked him if it was possible that the alcohol was making his sleep more restless, and he said, maybe, I don't know. I then asked him if he would consider going a few nights without alcohol, and he agreed. Since then, our co-sleeping has been wonderful, restful, and peaceful, except for one night. He shook me awake while I was sleeping and said, baby, I'll show you. I had no idea what he was talking about, so I asked him, and he said, I'll show you. I asked him if he was still asleep, and he replied, yeah, I'll show you. He then started snoring again, and I giggled myself back to sleep. In any case, I want to thank everyone for their kind advice, and we've decided to cut out alcohol before bed, which has helped tremendously. Hi, it's me again. Going back and reading those posts was insanely difficult. I want to kick myself for how deep in denial I was. Everyone in the comments was telling me that my boyfriend is an alcoholic, and I fought so hard against that. But it was true. A few months after my last post, I had an epiphany moment. It was 3 a.m. and he was drunk. He begged me to make him a pot of spaghetti because he liked the way I cooked it. I asked him if he would strain the pot for me because the pot that we have didn't have thermally safe handles, or whatever they're called, and I would often burn myself trying to do it on my own. He grumbled for a bit and said fine, but after less than 5 minutes, he said that he was going to hang out in our bedroom. I begged him not to because he would fall asleep, and trying to wake him when he falls asleep drunk often becomes a nightmare of verbal abuse. He insisted that he wouldn't fall asleep, but lo and behold, he did. I thought to myself, great, now I get to choose between burning my hands or being berated until I cry, all over a pot of effing spaghetti. I chose to burn my hands. I angrily made myself a plate and put the rest in the Tupperware, and reality hit. I'm just like my mom. My mom had been in with the alcoholic for 13 years. He is awful to her in so many ways, but she puts up with it because A, she feels like she can't do any better, and B, she believes that it's her duty as a wife to just deal with it quietly. And I was falling down the same path. I thought that if I could just grin and bear it, he'd see how much I love him and how much I do for him and realize that he needs to put in the same effort. Boy, how was I fucking wrong. I took off to a friend's house for the night and he panicked when he woke up in the morning and I wasn't there. He called me, crying, begging me to return. I unleashed all of my feelings in return and, in more words, told him that I didn't have much of an incentive to return, and how could I know that he'd do better? His tears turned to anger and he screamed down to the phone. It was terrifying. I ended up going back home to collect some things and I told him that I needed to separate from him because I didn't know how to help him anymore. And as deeply as I loved him, I couldn't stay and watch him kill himself any longer. I'd never forget the look he gave me. It was like I had kicked him in the stomach. I stayed with my friend for a month or so and had little to no contact with him. I ended up having to return to collect the rest of my stuff, and I noticed something strange. He had always been a kind of slob, leaving empty beers and liquor bottles on the floor besides his bed. But when I returned, by the side of his bed were only tea, sodas, and water bottles. His face was less sunken, and he didn't smell like beer at all. When he went to the bathroom, I took a sneak peek in his garbage can just to be sure. It was full, but there was no sign of anything alcoholic. He caught me peeking and asked what I was doing. He then told me that he hadn't touched alcohol since the day I left. I was shocked. We ended up sitting and talking for a little while. He said that being sober was hard and that he had the shakes all the time, and he missed me. I missed him too. I've been infatuated with him since I was 13. Those feelings weren't going away anytime soon. To wrap things up for the sake of character counts, we ended up getting back together. He celebrated 2 weeks of sobriety this week. I'm so proud of him. He sleeps restful now, with the exception of a mumble here and there in his sleep, and is no longer mean to me in any facet. Also, we're engaged now. Thanks for reading. I'm sorry I fought you guys so hard, and thank you for telling me the truth even though I wasn't ready to hear it. So guys, what did you think about this? I honestly feel so bad for OP. I can't imagine what she was going through. That being said, I am so glad that she decided to stand up for herself. And not just that, I'm a real sucker for happy endings. And so I'm so glad that her boyfriend decided to fix himself and address the issues. Like, alcohol dependence is no effing joke. And trying to beat that and be sober is such a huge struggle. Props to OP's partner for being able to pull that off. Anyways, I'd be really interested in hearing what you guys think about this. Please let me know in the comments down below. I'm just so happy that this has a happy ending. If you did like this, I would really appreciate it if you could leave a thumbs up. And please subscribe if you'd like to hear more stories from Reddit with updates.